The table below shows distances in centimeters jumped by a group of students during a school long jump competition. So, for question 8, we have to work out the number of students who jumped less than 240 centimeters. In order to do that, what we'll have to do is add up all the numbers of students who had distances below that. So, we add up 0 to 80, 80 to 160, and 160 to 240. So all we'll have to do is 0 plus 2 plus 7, which will give us an answer of 9 for part A. For part B, we have to draw a histogram to show the information in the table. We have to use the axes and scales below. Now let's have a look at how we have drawn this histogram. So from 0 to 80, which is this here, we've drawn it to a distance of 0. So what we're pretty much saying is 0 students jumped between 0 and 80 centimeters. Then 2 between 80 and 160. So we draw a rectangle like that. Then 7 between 160 and 240. 12 between 240 and 320. And finally 3 between 320 and 400. So this is our histogram representing the data in this table. For part C, we have to work out the maximum number of students who could have jumped more than 200 centimeters. Okay, so let's look at our data here. So we know that it definitely won't be these guys here because we know that 2 people jumped between 0 and 160 if we add these 2 together. But then this is what we have to focus on. From 160 to 240, 7 people jumped. So to understand this better, let's draw this out. So imagine this is your sand pit. So this is the distance between 160 and 240. So just choosing 2 random points here. Now, we know that 7 people landed somewhere between these 2 lines. But the issue is we don't know where. They could have all landed to the left, they could have all landed to the right, or they could have landed randomly throughout that distance. So, if we look at the question, it asks, what's the maximum number of students? So if we want to assume the maximum, so just, I'll draw in here, around here would be the 200 point, so halfway between. If we want to assume the maximum, we'll have to assume as many as possible landed after this line. So we put all of them to the right hand side. So we're counting all of the 7 as over 200 centimeters. If we're looking at the minimum, then we want to be really pessimistic and say none of them jumped over 200. But here, we don't know how far they jumped, but we're assuming, so that's how we're working out the maximum number of students who could have jumped more than 200. So to get the final answer, we count this entire 7, this 12, and this 3. So we count these because these will clearly be above 200 as they'll be further in this direction over here. So it'll be 12 plus 3 plus 7, which will give us an answer of 22 here. Okay, so for part D, I drag the table over here so we can see it. So we want to use mid-interval values to estimate the mean distance jumped by a group of students. Give your answer correct to the nearest centimeter. So we have 2 terms that come from statistics that we have to understand here. So first, let's look at what mid-interval means. So mid-interval. So mid-interval is something in the middle, as we can see mid here means in the middle. So in the middle of the interval. So for example, in part C, we were looking at the jumps between, what was it again? So let's have a look here. Between 160 and 240. So 200 would be the mid interval point. Why? Because it's exactly in the middle between these 2 points. It's 40 from 160 and 40 from 240. So that's what mid interval points are. So they're a point in the middle. We do that because, as I was saying in the previous question, we're not really sure where people are going to land. So the best thing to do, if we're not being pessimistic, if we're not being optimistic, is to assume they'll all land right in the middle. They'll all land at the 200 point here because that'll be sort of the most accurate guess. because it'll be right in the middle of our interval. So what we'll have to do is we'll assume all the people that jump between 0 and 80, they actually will assume they jumped 40. For these, 80 to 160, we'll assume they got 120, and so on. So I'm just going to fill these in here. So this will be 280, and this here will be 360. So 40, 120, 200, 280, 360. Those are mid-interval values. Those are the values in the middle. So what we're assuming in this case is that 2 people jumped 120 centimeters, 7 people jumped 200, 12 jumped 280, and 3 jumped 360. So now we got our first part. We're using the mid-interval values. Now let's look at explain what the mean is. So the mean is a form of an average. The way that we calculate mean is all entries over number of entries. So what does that mean? So all entries, we're going to add up. So let's say someone jumps 200, we add 200. Someone else jumps 280, we add 280. Another person jumps 200, we add 200, and so on, and so on, and so on. We divide that by the amount of people who jumped in the end. So the number of entries in this case will be everyone who took part in this competition. So every student that we have. That will be 2 plus 7, which is 9, plus 12, which is 21, plus 3, which is 24. Also, instead of adding them, usually they say it in the question. So let's just see. It's actually, they don't give you the total here. So, but we can just get it by adding them up. So we know that 24 students took part in this competition. So now, how do we calculate the mean? So you can see, usually when they give you a little bit more space in the question, it's for you to use it. So it means that there's some sort of calculations that we have to do. So instead of doing 120 plus 120 plus 200 plus 200 plus 200, that will take a while. What we do to make it a little bit easier is we multiply. So I'm going to say 2 students jumped 120 plus 7 students that jumped 200 plus 12 students that jumped 280 plus 3 students that jumped 360. So those are all of our students. So you can see that we have 2, 7, 12, 3, 24 students. All of that will be over 24. So over the total amount of students. So now let's calculate that. Once that is done, on your calculator you will get 253.3 recurring. This recurring, this little dot on your calculator, get just means 3. So 3 forever. So we are asked to give our answer correct to the nearest centimeter. So in this case, we have a 3, which means that we'll be rounding down. So our answer will be 253 centimeters. Okay, so for part E, we have to estimate the median distance jumped as accurately as you can. So for this, we'll be using the mid-interval values that we have from the previous question. So again, we don't know exactly how far people are jumping, so we're going to have to do a bit of estimation. So the median value is the value in the middle. So if we look, let's say if we draw 5 people, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are 5 people. The heads are more of a difference than the height here, but you get the idea. We want to get the median person. So we want a person who will have 2 people shorter than them and 2 people taller than them. So the person right in the middle. So in this case, it will be this person here, because these 2 are shorter and these 2 are taller. So this guy has the median height. Now we want to do something similar, but the issue is here we have 24 students. So you can easily get the median with odd values. You just get the number right in the middle. But with even numbers, there's no number right in the middle. If you think of the number 4, for example, there's no number right in the middle between 1 and 4, because you have 1, 2, 3, 4. In the middle would be somewhere between 2 and 3. So for that reason, we get the number in between two numbers when there's an even one. So in this case, if you think about it, we break 24 into two parts, that will be 12, and then the one above that will be 13. So if we have 24 entries, our median will be somewhere in between the 12 and the 13. The same way, if you had 4, the median would be somewhere between 2 and 3. So we're going to have to get something between the 12th and 13th entry. So let's do that here. So 2, 7. So we know 9 people are here. So 9 people will be here. So the 12th and the 13th person will be in this box here. Why do I know that? Because it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then it'll be 10, 11, 12, 13, all the way up to 21, and then 22, 23, 24. So this will be our median. So a good estimate of the median will be 280 centimeter. So your working out would be finding the median between the 12 and the 13. And seeing as they're both 280, you can get the average of them, which will also be 280.